Good morning, I'm Maiki Oreta, and you're watching Business 360, where we break down the numbers, connect the dots, and give you the developments and the insights you need to navigate, adapt, and lead. Let's dive right in. The Philippines swings to a $3 billion balance of payments deficit in Q1 as the current account gap widens faster than expected. Power's back in Siquijor as the National Electrification Administration beats President Marcos's 6-month deadline to end the island's energy crisis. And the Department of Migrant Workers says it's ready to act with mass repatriation plans in place if the Israel-Iran conflict continues to escalate. Global markets took a hit last Friday as missiles flew and risk sentiment cracked under geopolitical pressure. Wall Street closed sharply lower after Iran launched missiles at Israel, strikes that followed Israel's attacks on Tehran's nuclear sites. Investor confidence took a direct hit as markets weighed the risk of a full-scale regional war.
I think, depending on what happens, of course, if this escalates, that's a different story. But if we don't see a huge escalation, particularly outside of the borders where we're already seeing the conflict, I think that investors are going to go back to the idea that the Fed's going to lower rates, that we're not going to be in a recession. And even with somewhat higher oil prices, we managed quite well with higher oil prices for the past few years. So that in and of itself isn't necessarily going to cause problems.
The Dow Jones Industrial Average tumbled 1.8%. The S&P 500 lower by 1.1%, and the Nasdaq dropped 1.3%. Europe wasn't spared either. London's FTSE slipped 0.4%, Germany's DAX lower by 1.1%, and France's CAC 40 down by over 1%. The Philippines is back in the red, posting a $3 billion balance of payments deficit in the first quarter, and that's a big wake-up call for policymakers. Bangko Sentral data shows a sharp turnaround from last year's $238 million surplus. A reminder that external pressures aren't letting up. The main culprit, a widening current account gap, doubling to $4.2 billion as imports outpace inflows and investor sentiment remains on edge. Philippine external debt just surged to $146.7 billion in the first quarter as the government doubles down on borrowing to fuel big-ticket spending. Bangko Sentral data shows that's a 14% leap from a year ago, and a stark reminder that we're funding growth with debt, not productivity. The BSP says the spike came from higher public sector borrowings, primarily for infrastructure and budget support. But with global rates still high and fiscal space tightening, the real question is how much longer can we keep tapping this well without pushing the economy to its limit? The SEC's new crypto guidelines are drawing heat with a 100 million peso capital requirement that could freeze out smaller startups and send Filipino talent packing. Giro Luis Reyes, CEO of Bitsquela, calls it a regulatory overreach, warning it could push local crypto builders to incorporate abroad instead. Under SEC Memo Circular Number 5, any company applying to become a crypto asset service provider must put up at least 100 million pesos in paid-up capital, strictly in cash or property, not crypto. Reyes says this kind of entry bar sets the tone, not for innovation, but for an exodus. And in a sector built on speed and scale, the Philippines may be slowing itself down. Philippine tourism isn't just back, it's breaking records. International visitor spending is expected to surpass pre-pandemic levels in 2025, hitting 709 billion pesos, up from 695 billion in 2019. And that's not just spending. Tourism's total contribution to GDP is set to reach 5.6 trillion pesos, a 13.5 jump from pre-COVID levels. Yes, there are risks from geopolitical tensions to climate shocks, but the Philippines is emerging as a bright spot. We now rank 12th globally in direct tourism contribution to GDP, and that momentum is expected to create 2.5 million new jobs by 2035. The bottom line, tourism isn't just a recovery story, it's becoming a cornerstone of our economic future. Power is finally back in Siquijor after weeks of blackouts and blowback. The National Electrification Administration has met President Marcos's 6-month deadline and ended the island's energy crisis ahead of schedule. The agency fast-tracked repairs to the Villar-owned Siquijor Island Power Corporation plant and flew in a generator set from Palawan to stabilize supply. With extra rental units on the ground, the island now has 11 megawatts of dependable capacity, more than enough to meet peak demand. The NEA says it's still monitoring the situation to keep power flowing consistently in the weeks ahead. This comes after the province declared a state of calamity in May, following months of rotational brownouts that crippled homes and businesses. President Marcos stepped in personally, giving the agency 6 months to deliver results. The race to renewables is on, with the Department of Energy set to auction off over 10 gigawatts of solar and wind capacity this September. It's the country's biggest green push yet, aimed at fast-tracking our shift away from fossil fuels. The auction begins on September 2nd, following the Energy Regulatory Commission's release of final green energy auction reserve prices. Bid validation runs from September 11 to 17, and winning bidders have until October 3rd to say yes to the DOE's offer. This is all part of a high-stakes target: 35% renewables in the power mix by 2030 and 50% by 2040. We're taking a quick break. Please stay with us as we dive deep into the numbers and the narratives that matter most to your bottom line. Let's check on how Asian markets are doing this Monday morning. The Nikkei 225 is in the green, up by 0.9%. Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index is in the red, down by 0.2%. Shanghai's Composite higher by 0.1%, and Singapore's Straits Times Index in the red, down by 0.4%. Here at home, Philippine shares closed higher Friday, with investors pricing in a rate cut by the BSP this week, even as global markets tanked on escalating tensions between Israel and Iran. The PSE inched up last Friday by 0.2% to 63.96. But again, those gains were capped by geopolitical risk as oil prices spiked and investors turned defensive after Israel struck Iranians' military sites. Now, taking a look at our market this morning as of 10:14, the main gauge is in the red, tracking the losses in Wall Street overnight, the sharp losses in Wall Street overnight. The main gauge is down by 0.6% to 63.60. All shares index in the red as well, down by about as much, down by about 0.5% to 37.68. As for the sub-indices, all are in the red except for the mining and oil count, which is sharply up, higher by 0.4%. Now, total volume is at 335 million shares, valued at a whopping almost 4 billion pesos in early trade. So something's going on there, and looks like it's coming from the mining and oil counter. We'll take a look as the day advances, trading advances within the day. In the meantime, market breadth is very negative. We've got 84 decliners. We've got 51 advancers, and 40 stocks are unchanged. Taking a look at the currency market, the peso opens weaker, slightly at 56.25 against the greenback, slipping from Friday's close of 56.21. Now, all signs point to a rate cut. The Banco Central is widely expected to slash policy rates by 25 basis points on June 19th, this Thursday, as inflation continues to ease and as growth shows signs of cooling. A Business World poll of 16 analysts sees the benchmark rate dropping to 5.25%, down from 5.5%, in what could be the first step in a long-awaited easing cycle. Now, Governor Eli Remolona has already teed up the possibility, of 2 cuts this year, both at 25 basis points. But he's also been clear it all depends on the data. The Banco Central meets this Thursday for that rate hike discussion, and a 25 basis point cut looks like a done deal. Inflation dropped to just 1.3%, the lowest since 2018, and global banks from Goldman to Deutsche are now pricing in back-to-back easing starting June 19th. But as markets got comfortable with that narrative, new risks have emerged. The peso closed Friday at 56.21, its weakest in 6 weeks, as escalating tensions between Israel and Iran triggered a flight to safety and sent oil prices surging. This comes as the current account gap widens and domestic growth still struggles to gain momentum. So, how much room does the BSP really have to ease? And more importantly, will it be enough to shift sentiment and reignite investor confidence? Joining us this morning is First Metro's research head, Christina Ulong. Hi, Christina. Thanks for being here with us.
Hi, good morning, Mimi. Thanks for this opportunity.
Oh. Basis, 25 basis point rate cut this week. But given the intensifying conflict between Israel and Iran, could the BSP go bigger, or would that be too risky too soon?
I think they're going to go with like 25 basis points as widely expected by the market, because there is this new layer of uncertainty on top of what we're already seeing, this trade war. Now we have a physical war. It's actual military conflict between Israel and Iran, and we don't know how long is this going to be the drawn out battle. Is this going to be because the goal is some kind of a strategic, and some people are saying it could be regime change, it could be the dismantling of the Iranian nuclear facility. So it's going to take a long time, because the Israel were said to be not having the military weapon to actually do the dismantling of the nuclear facility. So this may take a long time, but on the other hand, some people are saying it could be a negotiating tactic, in the same way that the high tariffs were used to put other countries and enemy states on the defensive. So this is going to put the Iranian government on the defensive, debating whether to attack aggressively as they have attacked. But the question is, to what degree? Will it involve the US? Will this escalate? So there's so many uncertainties here, so many unanswered questions. And so it's a bit of risk off for seeing, we say, lower. And so I think the BSP is going to be also very conservative, but is still proceeding with the 25 basis point cut, because government is borrowing. We need lower interest rates. We have been at the very high end of our real yield. We need to grow the economy, of course. This is a pro-growth initiative, cutting by 25 basis points. And I think more needs to be done, as the BSP governor has said, more triple R cuts and more rate cuts on the table. The top priority now is really growth, growth, growth.
Yeah, the risk, that the developing risk between Israel and Iran is, it's pretty significant, because we're import dependent. It's going to hit us in oil. It's going to hit us in food. Talking on the oil front, if oil spikes because of this geopolitical risk, what's the first domino in the Philippines that could fall in response to this?
Yeah, we already have this call for higher wages and 200 pesos, and this additional pressure on inflation coming from the commodity space could reinforce the wider calls for higher wages, and could be inflationary. So I think the economic planners are going to be careful on deciding on this. I think they're against it, and I think the important thing really is to lower the cost of living by way of long-term reforms as far as agriculture and energy is concerned, because we are very much import dependent when it comes to our energy supply, our food supply. And so dollar funding has always been critical. And now we're seeing the peso retrace 56.25 precisely because of this inflation pressure coming from the spike in oil prices. Imagine 14% higher over 3 days to like 77 US dollars, Dubai crude, Brent, and WTI. And this, for every 10, our calculation is for every 10% increase in global oil prices, that translates to inflation of about 70 basis points. And of course, the peso dollar also translates to about 30 basis points in case of a 10% depreciation. But we're seeing the peso is stable. That's good for us. Rice prices globally are still low, $397 per ton, and then oil prices are moving up not because of fundamentals but because of this sentiment, risk of geopolitical. Because in terms of the fundamental supply and demand, there is still ample supply. Spare capacity in Saudi Arabia is about 5 million 5 million barrels per day, and then they're actually winding up the supply cuts. So more,
Yeah.
and then demand from China is also weak, and government and growth in the US
Yeah,
also
not
weak.
just China, the U.S. as
1.5.
well. So global demand for oil the global demand for oil based on the economies of China and the United States. How would you say that is as we come into this possible conflict between Israel and Iran?
I think the worst thing that can happen would be the closure of this critical pathway for the trade of oil, which is the Strait of Hormuz, the Red Sea. If there is going to be military conflict there, and if that becomes the flashpoint of all of these military attacks and air attacks, and there could be disruption there that carries about 20% of the global trade supply, and that could send this is according to Morgan Stanley, like 130 to 130 dollars per barrel of oil. I hope that doesn't happen, because we have seen that happen in 2022 when the Ukraine war erupted. I just hope we see a resolution immediately to this, and that would be in terms of what Trump is saying, that Iran should come to the table, negotiating table, and what the Atomic Energy Agency is saying, that indeed this is not just political, because the Iranian government has actually breached the anti-nuclear proliferation agreement. So they are there at that point when the uranium enrichment is not just for civilian use, but also maybe for weaponry. So that is the key concern.
Yeah, Christina, in terms of positioning, how can investors bet on the resolution of this conflict, and how can they hedge against it should it escalate?
Well, of course, you have if you're a foreign investor, people are already hedging against the volatility of the dollar. We may also be hedging against the volatility of the peso and the volatility of interest rates. There are instruments in the banking system that can offer clients and corporates hedging instruments in as far as volatility in these two markets, FX and interest rates. In terms of asset allocation portfolio, you may want to go heavy for the defensives, which will comprise your fixed income, maybe in the short end of the curve, and then middle of the curve, 3-year, 4-year, 5-year, and then of course lock in rates also in the long end, but there is some supply issues there. Government is, I think, going to borrow more, and so we have this steeper yield curve. But if you want to lock in the very rich yield of the 10-year and the 20-year and the 15-year peso bonds, peso sovereign bonds, then you can lock in there for safety, for consistency of your yield, and for the regularity of your cash flow. So it's fixed income, and but for those who are very into trading, I think there's very interesting volatility happening in the second half of this year, and these geopolitical events are contributing to the volatility, and volatility will always be your friend. If you know how to look at the trading bands, see where your entry points are and your exit points, but you must be very, very fast in this market.
Correct. Yeah, as we get into the second half, it has gotten interesting. Complicated, always. Interesting, yes, because of SEMEPA. The friction cost has eased. The stock transaction tax is now down from 0.6% to near zero at 0.1%. It's clear that, people can move. They can come in and out as they need to, even more now. That said, Christina, what's your outlook for this second half?
Well, the second half is going to be, as I have said, filled with a lot of volatility because of this new layer of geopolitical uncertainty. There is some kind of a risk off when it comes to equities, and when it comes to fixed income. There's also the threat of inflation. So you see, it's going to be a tricky market, and you should be very vigilant when it comes to what's happening outside, how the policymakers are reacting to it. But it's very good that we have SEMEPA. This is the Capital Markets Efficiency Act, Promotion Act, and it lowers the friction cost, and it's good for traders because the stock transaction tax reduces from 0.6% to 0.10%. And I think that's one of the biggest friction costs when it comes. The biggest is really your commission, and then your 12% VAT tax on commission, and then the SECP, which is small. But this one is the second biggest, I think, component of the friction cost. When you buy, it's like 0.6% of your gross selling price. So this is going to lower the friction cost for those that are very much into trading in and out of the market. And this is really going to help boost value turnover, interest in the stock market, but not overnight, because this is really a developmental tool. So this is going to be transformative. I just hope be transformative when it comes to value turnover, liquidity, and then of course foreigners
So,
becoming
yeah.
interested also because of the lower
Absolutely,
friction
absolutely.
cost.
When
Yes,
you look
yes.
at the metrics by which markets are gauged, Christina, there's the market cap, there's IPOs, there's value turnover, and there's foreign participation. Here in the Philippines, what's holding us back? Apart from SEMEPA, what else can we do to really, to bring all that action here to the Philippines?
Mhm. Oh, sad to say, we're lagging. Actually, our IPOs just three last year in Malaysia, in Indonesia, it's 39, it's 37, and then we're lagging also in terms of market capitalization. But I think there are a lot of good ideas from the our beloved BSP governor. He is really batting for the improvement in the risk premium of the economy, risk premium of the markets in terms of this interest rate swap. He has a three wish list that the bond market, the bond yield that we have becomes a bit more real and a bit more representative of what's going on in the market and not dominated by the big players. So he wants to see low-rated issuers come into the market, not only the triple A, not only the super triple A. This is the market that corporate bond is dominated by the triple Ayers, and but in Thailand, it's dominated by the triple B. Triple B issuers, low-rated issuers. So our governor would want us also to have a variety of companies getting into the bond market, issuing their own instruments, and then of course our participation in the global ETF. There's this party going on, bond a bonanza, but the Philippines is not in the global ETF. So he wants banks to find out and to discover the opportunity here. So a lot of things need to be done, and I just hope that the market participants get into digging into what is really holding us back, and then seeing the opportunity and getting into the fray. Of course, the PERA funds also is one that is there contemplated and being pushed in the SEMEPA because of the 50 basis point tax credit. Is it 50% or 50 basis point on the tax credit on the part of the employer participating in the contribution?
Looking at the bigger picture, Christina, as investors and traders make their next move, what is one message you'd like them to remember as they come into all of this uncertainty, this period of uncertainty?
Mhm. I think the Philippine economy will continue to grow. We have a very good set of economic planners and economic team, and that gives me a lot of confidence in the way the Philippine economy is being managed. And then our corporates, the balance sheets are very healthy. We are not so over leveraged. And I think we just need reform so that we are able to reduce our dependency on foreign oil imports, energy, and food, and so that our dollar funding becomes sufficient. I think in terms of our debt sustainability and fiscal management, we have a lot of leeway at this point because the economy continues to grow. So it's just that we have challenges when it comes to the deficits, especially externally. And that's
Yeah.
really rooted on the fact that we are heavily importing a lot of the basic. So I just hope that we continue to enjoy this OFW remittances, the pillars of our economy, the consumption-driven led nature of our economy, and our still low unemployment rate of 3.1. And now this SEMEPA that is being introduced, and efforts on the part of the central bank, these are all going to contribute to the development of the capital markets. It's going to be not an overnight transformation, but I think we are on the very
Yeah.
good start for our economy.
And one more economic concern that I wanted to bring to fore, Christina. Our external debt hit 146.7 billion US dollars. That's up 14% year on year. How sustainable is this? Is this strategic borrowing, or is this already over reliance? What are your thoughts on this?
I think the important thing is our access to capital markets, our access to foreign credit, and the key to that is really how well we manage our fiscal house. We are triple B plus rated, and the S&P is saying we continue to grow, and they are in fact said that we may be up for an upgrade, but I don't know if that's going to happen given the challenges that we're facing. But structurally, we are also insulated as far as the Trump tariffs is concerned. It's only 10%. The tariff imposed on us it's only 17%, which is the lowest in ASEAN. And we are also less trade dependent because our exports to the US is just 2.8% of our GDP. And I think we have OFW remittances, we have BPO, they continue to grow. The BSP is saying BPO is going to grow maybe not 7%, but 5%. It's been lowered. Our OFW remittances is facing a challenge, the 3.5% tax that the US Congress is contemplating on remittances. I just hope Philippine negotiators are able to ask the US government to waive that so we continue to
Yeah, that's
receive
going to
all
be
of these
major.
receipts.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in terms of the trade, all of these uncertainties, we are in a position to weather. I think we've seen so many crises in the past, and I think the reforms that we have made would enable us to have the capacity to weather all of these crises.
Yeah, and we'll leave it at that. Yeah.
Externally driven crisis abroad, the war. We don't have a crisis here. For clarification, we don't have a
Yes.
crisis in the field. We are very much on the growth path and on the rate cutting cycle because of low inflation.
All right. Thank you so much, Christina Ulang, for sharing your thoughts with us
Thank
this
you.
morning.
Sorry, Mikey, earlier.
That's okay. That's okay. All right. Thanks, Christina.
Thanks, Mikey. Bye-bye.
We're taking a short break. Business 360 will be right back. Welcome back. The push for safer streets is getting louder, and this time it's about going back to basics, reclaiming sidewalks and raising the bar on Filipino discipline. A recent forum brought together government officials, private sector leaders, and urban planning experts, all saying the same thing: enforcement starts on the ground. Our mobility correspondent G. Baroga has that story.
Clear the sidewalks and bring back discipline. That's the back-to-basics approach that Senator Win Gatchalian says is key to fixing the country's chaotic streets. At the Voice of Volvo Forum hosted by Harryville Asia Resources, Senator Gatchalian points out that mobility begins the moment you step outside your home, while also stressing what many Filipinos see every day: sidewalks are vanishing.
The low-hanging fruit that we can implement right away is to recover the sidewalks. I think we're the only country in the world that do not have sidewalks. Our sidewalks are actually either used for parking or even used for vendor stalls. They're used for everything other than walking.
It's not just infrastructure that's broken, it's behavior too. And the senator asserts discipline goes both ways for road users and law enforcers. Political scientist Dr. Grace Hammond says the problem runs deeper. It's cultural.
There's no cultural obedience to law. We obey only because we are afraid of the penalties that can be. So kung pwede mong takasan yung penalty, he'll go around the bush and you will not follow traffic rules, for example. So we have a culture of not enforcing the law. In the country, we have many laws, but enforcement really is the problem.
DOTR Assistant Secretary Jojo Reyes agrees and adds that recognizing that there is a problem is the first step to resolve them.
Our road management system is quite a challenge. The roads, the infrastructures, the vehicles, and the attitudes or character of the road users.
DLSU professor and EVAP Executive Director Manny Biona adds that fixing this isn't the job of one agency. It takes everyone to move: the government, the private sector, and most especially the Filipinos.
Number one would be the policies and the enforcement, and then second is the education. Yeah, I think if we're able to address those immediately, somehow it would have a big impact. Then as we address also our infra side.
Volvo, for its part, is helping reshape Filipino driving culture by promoting new safety tech. The new ES90 sedan launching this year includes features that prevent drowsy or drunk driving.
The sensors could provide assistance to the driver if he feels sleepy, if he's drowsy, if he's drunk. The car just won't move. And the car, because of AI and automation, will really drive you on the side of the road. So this is very important, I would say, as a support to how we could improve better driving on the road.
Volvo also signed an MOU with DLSU to promote road safety education, sharing global best practices and advanced tech with Filipino learners. The goal is to rebuild a culture of mindful mobility, starting with something as simple but powerful as walking safely on a clear sidewalk. For BNC Mobility, G. Baroga.
Shares of Razon-led Bloomberry Resorts surged last week, riding the wave of digital gaming hype with the launch of its new platform, Mega Fanalo. The stock soared 23.6% to close at 6 pesos and 18 centavos, making it the most traded name on the PSE with over 4.13 billion pesos in value turnover. Mega Fanalo marks Bloomberry's biggest bet yet in the online gaming space, complementing its existing Soler online platform and expanding its digital reach. Investors are clearly buying into the vision, but analysts warn that the real test will be user growth, platform stickiness, and monetization. In the background, Soler Resort North continues to deliver strong numbers, adding fuel to Bloomberry's long-term growth story. Vice President Sara Duterte says she's ready to stand her ground after formally receiving the writ of summons from the Senate impeachment court last week. Her office confirms the document includes 7 articles of impeachment, all tied to alleged graft and corruption. At the center of it, claims she misused confidential funds from both the Office of the Vice President and the Department of Education. But Duterte isn't backing down, saying she's confident she'll weather what she calls politically motivated attacks.
The attacks are cowardly, yet openly disingenuous and arrogant. Absence of basic human decency and respect for the rule of law. Typical of people drunk in power. Pero nananatili tayong nakatayo dahil ang ipinaglalaban natin ay tama at totoo. Justice bends to the truth, and we are ever more resolute in our fight for the Philippines. Kalayaan, kinabukasan, yung ating KKK, kasaysayan, kalayaan, kinabukasan. At naniniwala akong maipapanalo natin ang laban na ito dahil laban natin itong lahat.
Video of the impeachment of Vice President Sara Duterte without verifying its source. The clip, styled to look like a street interview, shows students expressing frustration over the trial. But a popular Facebook page quickly called it out, warning even senators can be fooled by AI. So far, De La Rosa hasn't issued a clarification. The former PNP chief has been one of Duterte's most vocal defenders and was among the senators who voted to send the impeachment case back to the House, stalling the trial in the upper chamber. President Bongbong Marcos is drawing a hard line, saying that the ongoing cabinet reset isn't about friendship, faction, or political loyalty. Every member of his team, he says, is still under probation. In the latest episode of BBM Vlogs, the president dismisses talk that he's shielding allies, stressing that only performance will decide who stays and who goes.
Kahit kaibigan kita, mahal kita at lahat, pero hindi mo nagagawa yung trabaho eh. Hindi naman ito tungkol sa pagkakaibigan ng pagmamahal natin sa isa't isa kung hindi para sa serbisyo para sa tao.
On another front, good news for travelers. Taiwan is extending visa-free entry for Filipinos until 2026. Under the policy announced by Taiwan's Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Filipinos can visit visa-free for up to 14 days, now extended until July 31st of 2026. But here's the fine print. The exemption doesn't cover diplomatic, official, or service passport holders. So double check your documents before booking that flight. We're taking a quick break. Business 360 will be right back. Welcome back. Israel and Iran are trading fire, and the escalation is turning deadly fast. Iran launched a fresh salvo of missiles and drones at Israel on Sunday, hitting residential areas and strategic infrastructure. Tehran's military urged Israeli residents to evacuate near military and scientific facilities, hours after Israel issued a similar warning to Iranians near weapons plants. The human cost is climbing. Over 200 dead in Iran, more than 1,000 injured. Israel reports at least 14 fatalities and hundreds more wounded. Now, Germany, France, and Britain are pushing for talks with Iran in a last-ditch effort to cool tensions and revive nuclear negotiations. This comes as Washington tries to strike a balance, backing Israel while publicly hoping for peace. U.S. President Donald Trump says he hopes Israel and Iran can reach a peace deal, but admits sometimes countries have to fight it out first. Speaking to reporters ahead of the G7 summit in Canada, Trump said that the U.S. remains committed to Israel's defense, but stopped short of confirming whether he's pressing Tel Aviv to stand down. CNN reports that Trump rejected a proposal from Israel to assassinate Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. A Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has denied.
Well, I hope there's going to be a deal. I think it's time for a deal, and we'll see what happens. But sometimes they have to fight it out, but we're going to see what happens. I think there's a good chance there'll be a deal.
This comes as the fallout from the Israel-Iran conflict could hit much closer to home. Albay Representative Joey Salceda is sounding the alarm, saying that the Philippines must brace for major spillover effects. Salceda, who chairs the House Ways and Means Committee, says the escalating clashes now pose serious risks to the global economy. He warns a full-blown conflict could send oil prices surging, weaken the peso, disrupt labor markets, and push up the cost of imports, all of which threaten the pillars of the Philippine economy. His message: the country needs to be fiscally prepared and act fast if things spiral further. The Department of Migrant Workers says it's ready to act with a mass repatriation plan in place if the Israel-Iran conflict escalates any further. The Philippine Embassy in Tel Aviv confirms 4 Filipinos have been injured, enough to trigger heightened alerts and rapid contingency planning. Secretary Hans Leo Kakdak says no evacuation has been ordered yet, but he's making it clear if the situation deteriorates, speed and timing will be everything. Families here at home can call the DMW hotlines for real-time updates on their loved ones. According to Kakdak, there are roughly 30,000 Filipinos in Israel and a smaller group of about 30 in Iran. Protests erupt across the United States as critics accuse President Trump of pushing the limits of executive power through his immigration crackdown. In Los Angeles, police deploy tear gas and flashbangs to break up crowds after demonstrators block major roads with makeshift barricades. The standoff coincides with a military parade in Washington, staged by Trump to mark the U.S. Army's 250th anniversary. The rallies, dubbed the No Kings protests, highlight growing concerns that Trump, now in his second term, is stretching the constitutional limits of presidential power. A suspected political assassin is now at the center of a deadly shooting in Minnesota after posing as a police officer to target Democratic lawmakers in their own homes. Authorities have identified the suspect as 57-year-old Vance Luther Bolter, who they say shot and killed Democratic Representative Melissa Portman and her husband, Mark. He also wounded State Senator John Hoffman and his wife, Yvette, in a separate attack. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz is calling it what it looks like, a politically motivated assassination. But so far, investigators have not released a formal motive.
I feel safe. I'm not too worried about it. I mean, obviously it's concerning, but there's a huge police presence and I feel protected. And it's scary, but in the same sense, I'm not too scared.
Still in North America, Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney just met with British Prime Minister Keir Starmer in Ottawa ahead of the G7 summit in Alberta. The two leaders are aligning strategy as the group of 7 heads into talks shadowed by tensions with the U.S. on trade and foreign policy. Carney, who's hosting this year's summit in the Canadian Rockies, says his focus is clear: strengthening global security, shoring up mineral supply chains, and generating jobs. The meeting comes as Middle East conflicts intensify, with fresh attacks between Israel and Iran killing dozens just hours before the summit opened. These escalations, along with trade strains and U.S. leadership questions, are expected to dominate this year's G7 agenda.
Obviously, the conflict with Israel and Iran is centerpiece, and this provides the opportunity to talk to our co-leaders about the fast-moving situation and to make our strong case together that there must be de-escalation of this conflict in the interests of the region and of course the world. And so I look forward to working with you.
And that's it for Business 360. I'm Maiki Oreta. Thank you for joining us, and keep it here on BNC, the Bilyonaryo News Channel.